What was the first man doing? Who discovered milk? Was he just going round suckling on random animals' wieners? How many animal wieners did he suck before stumbling on milk? How many random animals' wieners did that man suck before discovering milk? Was that man a genius or a bird?
Look at me. I got the mic all the way over there. I'm not talking into the mic because I'm an idiot. But yeah. Oh, I just mumbled all that and I'm not going to repeat it. But yeah, I stayed up till 8 a.m. playing video games with the kids because I'm obsessed with any time I can spend with my kids these days. Because I wasn't there at all for the first parts of their lives. The first two, pretty much, I wasn't there until they were almost adults. The third one, I was there for the bulk of his life. Because of that, I now spend, if I hate ham, but I would choose 5 minutes of making a ham sandwich with my kids over a night of doing any other thing I love. And that's how more people should be. And I wish I would have learned that in my 20s. But here we are now, making up for it, staying up till 8 a.m. playing a video game. And I love it and it's worth it. What have I got going on here? Here we go. Let's do some Philly D, Philly D, Philly D.
Sup, you
Philly
beautiful
D.
bastards. Welcome back to the
What
Philip DeFrank.
is up, you hunka burning man? You hunka burning man. Ooh.
Go show you daily dive into the news. And we have got a lot to talk about. This monster, the Katy
Sure do.
Perry controversy, the world of podcasting changing, Justice Thomas's impeachment, the chaos in Nevada, Israel-Gaza updates, and this deep dive into race-adjusted medicine. So buckle up, hit that like button, let's just
Interesting.
jump into it.
This is a news show.
Hit me with the
News like
monkey.
this makes me wonder if we should just factory reset society. Because we need to talk about this guy who's in the news, Gary Miles, because he's accused of ejaculating onto a stranger's leg in a Dollar Tree.
Mm. He's wearing a shirt. I know there's a picture of a candy cane there, but for all those people who say, I sure wish people came with warning labels, they do. They do. People do come with warning labels. You just ignore them. You ignore them and misinterpret them, whether intentionally or otherwise. Yeah, they have warning labels.
You might actually already be surface level familiar with this story because this video has been going around social media. It's blown up. You see this woman following a fleeing Gary out of a Dollar Tree in Philadelphia. And in it, she is chasing him and yelling,
Look, he nutted on my leg. You go to hell.
and then I am not going to show you the rest of the video because she then shows her leg, and it very much appears there is something that could be from Gary on her. But then in this video, the horror of this all seeming to catch up with her. I mean, she just breaks down in tears. And thing is, this actually didn't just happen. Well, the video absolutely blew up yesterday, getting over 30 million views. This reportedly happened back in June, getting a lot of people's attention, including rapper Meek Mill, who's from Philly, and he offered $2,000 for Gary's location, saying, let's play manhunt with him today. And actually, regarding Gary, this was a big update. He reportedly turned himself into police last night, with the department releasing a statement saying PPD extends its gratitude to the public for their assistance in locating Mr.
Hold on. Hold on.
with him today. And actually, who's from Philly, and he offered happened back
Hold on.
in June, getting a lot of people's attention, including rapper Meek Mill,
This happened in June. Meek Mill.
who's from Philly, and he offered $2,000 for Gary's.
Hold on. Hold on. Because I'm about to shit on society. July 10th. Just go live with him. Don't pursue him. It gotta actually be you. Philly small people know where this creep ass dude at. Get the fuck out of here. We need community protection. Also, yeah. What do people? Okay. All right. So he just put this up today. Okay. Okay. So he just put that up today. All right. Oh my god. All right. So I'm not going to shit on him. He just put the reward out today. But still, how long have they been looking for this dude? It happened in June. I mean, I was going to say, like, man, if he put out that reward like weeks ago, then fuck all y'all, man. Y'all were protecting him. But still, like, what Meek put in that one tweet, you know? Philly's not that big. Y'all know where the motherfucker is at. You just protected him because you're awful. You're awful. And look what happened. He had to turn himself in. Everybody around that motherfucker knew. Everybody around him knew. But this is everybody keeps talking about, oh, the problem with the world today, problem with the world today. No, I'm gonna tell you the actual problem with the world today. And I hope to fucking God it hurts feelings. I hope everyone who sees and hears the words gets all defensive about it. Because the problem with the world today is you choose your fucking friendship over right and wrong. You choose your relationship with a particular person and your relationship with the clique that you belong to over right and wrong. And you do it every fucking time. You would let a million innocent people die just to preserve your membership in whatever clique you belong to. And that's what's wrong with the world today. You look the other way while all the bigots you know bully all of these other people you also call your friends, and you just sit by and watch it, and you let it happen, and you say nothing, and you continue being nice and friendly to the bully and the bigot while telling their victims that, oh yeah, but I'm your friend too. No, you're not. And I'll tell you right now, you think those people love you and they're your friends, but they don't. They see what you do and they keep you at arm's length. So if you ever feel like you're maybe getting a cold shoulder from them, yeah, you are. And it's you and you deserve it. And you deserve more than that. You don't deserve to have friends because you're choosing the bigot over right and wrong just because you don't want to get booted out of this fucking high school clique that you never grew out of. Perfect example, anyone who's still friends with John Byrne. Anyone who's still friends with Jim Colley. Anyone still being friends with Nate Roberts. It's fucked up. That's what's wrong with the world today. So if If you're having a bad time of it, you're getting the day you deserve in the world you deserve.
his location, saying, let's play manhunt with him today. And actually, regarding Gary, this was a big update. He reportedly turned himself into police last night, with the department releasing a statement saying, PPD extends its gratitude to the public for their assistance in locating Mr. Miles. And we just learned today that he's been charged with indecent assault, indecent exposure, open lewdness, and harassment. Also, while this alone is horrifying enough, oddly enough, it is not even the first time this exact thing has happened at a Dollar Tree. With there in fact being another woman who's in Houston suing Dollar Tree for negligence after a man followed her around the store, harassing her, and then even ejaculated onto her back last December. With that woman saying, he started saying all the things he wanted to do to me. It was really bad. I couldn't believe this was happening. I panicked and told him he was disgusting, and I immediately went to get my friend on the other aisle. Saying when my friend looked at my clothes, she just panicked, and saying that when she told the store manager, they said it was the third time in less than 4 days that someone had been sexually assaulted in the store. And so you have the woman's attorney arguing that the company is liable for the assault because they've created an unsafe environment due to understaffing. So yeah, I guess be careful the next time you go to a Dollar Tree. I'm not saying it's a company staple, but it is very weird that that very specific thing has happened at multiple locations. And then Katy Perry is actually anti-women. That's what a growing number of people are arguing after seeing teasers for her new song, Woman's World. The one, it's not limited to that, and two, that single and the video for it don't actually come out until tonight, but these promos have generated a ton of discourse. With this actually starting when Rolling Stone reported that Dr. Luke was among the producers Katy worked with on her upcoming album. Right? And that after notably he and Kesha previously settled a long legal battle.
And also, this shit happens because y'all motherfuckers see this happening and you run away to the other aisle and pretend you weren't part of the scene. But anyone can look back at the security footage and see that you saw and you went the other way because, oh, I don't want to get involved.
That included claims that Dr. Luke sexually, physically, and emotionally abused Kesha. Though there, he has denied those allegations, but still, many people were shocked to learn that she's reportedly working with him, especially since her song is Woman's World and it appears to be a girl power anthem. With people saying things like, who is this song for? Being a woman in this world is already degrading and difficult, but to release a women empowerment song produced by a woman's abuser is insane. I really hate fake feminism. You also had actress Abigail Breslin not mentioning Katy, but writing that working with known abusers in any industry just contributes to the narrative that men can do abhorrent shit and get away with it. Stream Kesha. Though that's also...
It's not even men. It's money. It's money, man. It's money. Fucking $1 Million Man said it a million times, and that's why $1 Million Man was such a perfect character in wrestling, because he was an example. He was the epitome of this mindset. Every time he said, everybody's got a price. And then he would do these things like kiss my foot for $100 or do this for $100, do that. And he would do these like stunts, make people degrade themselves for money just to prove like, yeah, everybody's got a price. So yeah, the person who will do the video with a known abuser just because money, I mean, there's a whole litany of other disgusting things they would do for money. Like when you tell me that, I respond with, I bet you there's an amount of money she would take to eat a dog turd.
also not the only reason that people have been taking issue with this song. Or you've got tons of people who aren't fans of the music video teaser that Katy shared, since it shows her in a revealing Rosie, the Riveter-inspired outfit at one point, dousing herself in whiskey, joined by a bunch of female dancers, all dressed as scantily clad construction workers. And so you had folks writing things like Woman's World, and all you can see in the teaser is a woman's body sexualized as much as possible, making a quote-unquote
made by an
feminist
abuser.
song when all you're doing is being hypersexual in the music video, plus sexualizing feminist icons is crazy. With many arguing that all of this, it just caters to the male gaze. Others also taking issue with the dancers, noting that on top of them being sexualized, they only represented a very thin beauty standard, and claiming things like it's a woman's world and she only shows women with one body type. With a lot of this, people saying it just appears like she's behind the times and out of touch with where culture is at large. And one of the conversations around this is, rather than
Playboy
these
spread
ultra-thin ideals, you actually now have a lot of mainstream pop stars who are singing about those standards and how...
I mean, like, seriously. Like that, I watched the music video, and I'll tell you right now, it's the musical equivalent of a Playboy spread. And who was Playboy for? I'll just leave it there.
how it harmed them. With, for example, the New York Times even doing a piece on the trend this week, noting that Billie Eilish's new album has lyrics like, "People say I look happy just because I got skinny, but the old me is still me and maybe the real me, and I think she's pretty." You also had the likes of Lord hopping on a Charlie XCX song to include a verse saying, "For the last couple years, I've been at war in my body. I tried to starve myself thinner, and then I gained all the weight back." Right? And they're not alone. Taylor Swift has also sung about this. Olivia Rodrigo having lines like, "I started to skip lunch, stopped eating cake on
It
birthdays."
happens to me
So
too.
with all this,
I mean, it happens to men too. Like, I'm ashamed of my body in public because I've been raised in this culture that you've got to look like an athlete. But the truth is there's athletes out there with like marshmallow bodies just like me.
I'm saying, it is indicative of a subtle shift among the current generation of female
It's just they hide their bodies too because, shame.
pop stars who have recently been acknowledging, often in stark, striking, and possibly triggering language, the pressure they have felt to look thin. Though obviously, with all this discourse happening, there are people that are more focused on one thing or the other, whether it be the Dr. Luke stuff, the hypersexualization, or, the body images. But ultimately, we're gonna have to wait to see if this actually negatively impacts the streams, if it negatively impacts the sales, or, if all of this discourse, it just brings more and more attention and success to something that she's releasing. Because, that's just how the attention economy works. Though personally, as someone that was previously a very lost and angry young man, the only thing I care about in the music world this week is Eminem dropping an album tomorrow. The rest is just static and noise to me. But then let's shift gears to very interesting news in the world of podcasting. And a lot of it's being driven by Amazon's Wondery, going after some of the biggest names in the industry.
will
They're
actually
now
be
reportedly
interesting.
inking an $80 million deal with Dax Shepard and his Armchair Expert show. And that's a big deal, not only because of the number, not only because it was formerly with Spotify, but now Wondery is going to distribute that podcast and co-produce 2 new ones. And that's in addition to holding an annual live stream with Dax and also launching video episodes and taking on the whole back catalog. And this, as Wondery is also apparently in talks to pick up Travis and Jason Kelsey's New Heights podcast. Though that is not set in stone yet, neither is the future of Call Her Daddy, which according to the Wall Street Journal, while it is with Spotify now being shopped around, and the Wall Street Journal saying that Sirius.
What I hate about podcasting and like any of this, really, like any of this, like my biggest question is how much more money do these motherfuckers need? How much more shit do these rich motherfuckers need to own before they start getting horny, stop getting horny for everything? I mean, how much of our globe does this, whoever the fuck this is on the screen, those other people, the athletes and everybody, like how much more of the fucking world do they need to own and control and occupy before they're satisfied? When do the average people get to break in? Like what I was telling somebody earlier when they were complaining about the quality of news they were getting. I was explaining to them that it's still all the same corporate bullshit. It really is. It's and like Wall Street Journal or Business Insider or whatever put out a thing a while back. I've mentioned it a million times where they had definitive proof that the average workers at the bottom of the ladder were more intelligent and qualified than the actual CEOs and people at the corporate level running the company. And, and that's where people started pointing out, like, and I was one of them that was quick to point out, you can fire all the managers and the companies will keep going. And they will keep functioning and they will stay profitable. But if you take away the workers, then the manager is just a dumbass standing in an empty building. So, it's quite obvious who's the actual important person in that dynamic. Well, without me, you wouldn't have a job to work at. Well, no, without you, somebody else would have just come along and started up that company, and it might have been an actual worker instead of you taking over that space. So that's some delusional capitalist bullshit, but capitalism relies on delusion to exist. But no, like how much more of this fuck her. I don't care about her. Take her away. Make her go away. Make all those people in those pictures that they showed go away and replace them with everyday Joe Schmoes and Jill Schmoes. Just it's fucking horrible. How much more shit do you need to own and control? Why is Jake Tapper the guy sitting in the chair talking into the camera? Why him? Why does he get to be the one? Because Jake Tapper is honestly just another corporate stooge handed a job by a corporate stooge. And so that's why all the people on TV telling you the news are just spewing bullshit. And it's why you're looking at them going, how is this person so dumb yet they're working at this job? Well, it's because the person who hired them is also dumb, because you don't get ahead in corporate America by being intelligent and qualified. You get ahead in corporate America by either being an asshole or an ass kisser. So you end up with everyone at the top unqualified as fuck. And you end up with Jake Tapper saying the dumbest shit you've ever heard on your TV and calling it news, and is being presented as news, and is being presented as important information you should consume. And it's just stupid. And you're just like, what the hell? Well, yeah, this is the world you deserve because you let the dumbest people go to the top. We did away with standards. The people, the bad people whose bad practices get, we let the bad people whose bad practices created all the bad situations convince us that the regulations that stopped them were what's actually bad. You let rich men convince you that it's not the fire that's bad. It's not the thing that started the fire that's bad. No, it's that woke smoke alarm and that woke fire department stealing all your tax dollars. You let them convince you those people were bad. Those things were bad.
This is currently a front
You let them convince you to blame the rain for the clouds.
runner to pick it up, but also possibly a game changer. Also, maybe it's a nothing. It looks like Spotify is interested in getting engagement on podcasts, with them now reportedly set to launch a comments feature on its podcast. Though apparently it would not look like the comment section that you're used to, because according to The Verge, comments will be default as private, and creators then get to approve what comments that appear there. And then they can also just opt out of the feature in full or on a per episode basis. So I will say, I don't know how many podcasts are going to enable the comment section. And that's because there's been conversation in the industry for a very long time that a lot of podcasts actually have very inflated or boosted numbers. And while in places like YouTube, you can go to a video and see if the number of likes and the number of comments, it seems, kind of real, where you can have viewers and advertisers who know this space looking at it, and they can tell you if it passes the smell test or not. There's a belief that a number of podcasts that are successful just on podcasting platforms would not. But regardless, big shifts, big changes. It's very interesting. And then, while Biden old definitely got the gold this week for media attention, silver, I would say, goes to Project 2025. Clarence Thomas, he's been fighting to make the podium, right? And that for a number of reasons, starting with 2 Democratic senators are calling for a criminal investigation into Thomas for possible violations of tax laws and federal ethics. Right, with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island and Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon sending a letter to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, asking him to appoint a special counsel. A special counsel that would be tasked with investigating Thomas's failure to disclose his sugar baby antics, with that including the acceptance of lavish gifts and luxury travel. And specifically with this, they're asking the special counsel to look into whether Thomas violated tax laws by failing to disclose his income, the $267,000 he received in forgiven debt for a luxury RV, with the Senate Finance Committee previously concluding that a good chunk of that loan came from Thomas's friend, Anthony Welters, and was forgiven in 2008. They're also asking the special counsel to investigate the $25,000 in consulting fees paid to Thomas's wife, Virginia, by conservative judicial activist Leonard Leo, with some ethics experts saying that those payments raise questions about whether Thomas should have recused himself from certain cases. And in their joint statement, Whitehouse and Wyden wrote, "We do not make this request lightly. Supreme Court justices
oh my God,
are
they're
properly
so
expected
fucking
to obey
awful.
laws designed to prevent conflicts of interest and the appearance of impropriety, and to comply with the federal tax code." And adding, no government official should be above the law. Now with this, the senators may have asked for a special counsel, but that doesn't mean that
all
the Justice
Republicans have
Department is
placed
actually gonna
themselves.
make that
It's
happen. For example,
wild how
Jeremy Fogel, a former federal
it's wild how Democrats are held to these ungodly standards that hardly anyone can meet. But a Republican, it's like all you have to do is just be a warm body in a chair, and yep, you pass. Well, as far as general society goes, but no, but the Republican Party itself has its own set of standards. It's like, nope, you're not hating black people enough.
Judge
Nope,
and executive
nope, you're not hating gay people. If you don't start bashing gays and blacks more, then we're gonna start calling you a woke libtard.
director of the Berkeley Judicial Institute saying inevitably it would be seen as political retribution.
The Republicans could literally elect a dog turd, and everyone would just be like, okay. But look, Biden, he's old.
For rulings that justices made that they don't like. I just don't know how you get out of that box. Though also, actions that may lead nowhere, that seems to be kind of the theme surrounding everything Clarence Thomas. Because also in the news, you have Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez introducing articles of impeachment against Thomas and Samuel Alito yesterday. The
Good.
AOC accusing both justices of failing to recuse themselves from certain cases that have come before the Supreme
They
Court,
did.
as well as failing to disclose gifts from wealthy benefactors. And AOC saying in a statement,
If the Democrat justices had done this, they'd be all fucking. I mean, look at all the fucking hoops that uh uh who's the new Democrat judge? Katanji Brown Jackson, is it? Ah, holy shit. Well, maybe it wasn't. So who was she? Yeah. So uh is this old? Oh. Well, there you have. Thank you. Oh my god. I just realized how fucking this is so confusing. But anyway, yeah, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she had to jump through so many hoops. I mean, seriously. The her whatever you call it, the approval hearing, it was fucking. I mean, see, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Fucking sheep. Every single one of them is a Trump supporter, guaranteed. But But seriously, to be a Republican Supreme Court justice, the standards are so low. You could be the dumbest person in the world, don't even have a law degree, and it's like, yep, that's fine.
Justice Thomas and Alito's
Membership in the Republican Party is like they have lower standards than McDonald's, lower standards than Taco Bell. The politics of the Republican Party, there is no lower employment standards.
repeated failure over decades to disclose that they received millions of dollars in gifts from individuals with business before the court is explicitly against the law. And the refusal to recuse from the specific matters and cases before the court in which their benefactors and spouses are implicated represents nothing less than a constitutional crisis. And further adding, Congress has a legal, moral, and democratic obligation to impeach. Though really, with the current state of things, especially with a Republican-controlled House, this is not going to go anywhere. Though it gives me an opportunity to drop a little piece of fun trivia. The only time that a Supreme Court justice has actually ever been impeached was Samuel Chase back in 1805, but even there he was acquitted by the Senate. Also, if that ends up helping you on a trivia night, you owe me a drink. But that said, going back to AOC, she was joined by several Democrats in introducing the articles of impeachment, and as the New York Times said, some Democrats say their party must make a case against the justices in the court of public opinion, which I will say there it could have value, especially as we head to an election where the Democrats are going to really need to focus on policy versus what Trump would do if he gets back in office. Whether that be something like a Project 2025, or the fact that he'd be in a position to put more people on the Supreme Court, along with the fact that the people he has put on the Supreme Court already have made massive sweeping changes, whether it be immunity or Roe v. Wade. What more of that could look like in the near future, especially if he gets to put even more people up there. And then I want to take a second to talk about today's sponsor and something that's been a game changer for me. Seeds DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. We're all hearing a ton about gut health these days with just millions of posts and endless videos throughout social media. Like, it just gets overwhelming, right? But amidst the confusion, there's one company standing strong for scientific integrity and transparency, and that is Seed. What sets Seed apart is their commitment to science. These guys, they're not messing around. It's not just a probiotic, it's a symbiotic. And funding not only their election campaign, familiar as a swing county and a swing state, 5% off your first order of Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic Plus, free shipping. And then, so if you want a sneak peek at all the chaos we're going to see this November, you don't have to look further than Washoe County, Nevada, which if you're unfamiliar is a swing county and a swing state, as well as the second largest in Nevada, and it is going to be a decisive factor in choosing the next U.S. president. Last month, we saw Washoe voters going to the polls for several local elections, including a Republican primary for the Washoe County Commission and a nonpartisan primary for a school board seat. And right off the bat, there were some administrative issues, most notably a printing error that meant that some people in a small precinct may have needed to re-vote. So the losing candidates in each race, Mark Lawson for the commission seat and Paul White for the school board seat, both Republicans, requested a recount. And turns out the man funding not only their election campaigns, but also the recount itself is a wealthy Republican donor by the name of Robert Beadle. Notably, ever since the 2020 election, has been working very hard to replace local officials with far-right election-denying conspiracy theories. And he has shown himself not to be above mobilizing an army of activists to harass election workers until they buckle. Or back in 2022, for example, he hounded the registrar of voters.
And they get away with it. Why? Well, because the cops are part of the fucking group. That's what you need to understand. That's what I wish anyone who had to report a story like this, I wish it was required by law that they had to point out. And he's getting away with it because the cops are on his side and are part of that group.
So hard, accusing her of treason and demanding she be fired or thrown in jail, that she just quit. And just to give you an idea of what's inside this guy's head, he claims to have an analysis from a mathematician and an artificial intelligence supercomputer showing that it was highly unlikely that his candidates lost their elections. So as you might imagine, he and his people went absolutely buck wild when the voter registrar's office took longer than expected to recount ballots because the tabulation machines broke down. And this, even though the interim voter registrar said there were no errors or discrepancies in the recount, which by the way, changed only a single vote in each of the two races. So the initial results were essentially fine. But when the county commission gathered to certify the recount on Tuesday, dozens of people, including Beatles, protested outside the building.
We want a hand recount now.
But a key thing is that Nevada law requires recounts to be performed by the same method that the original election was tallied. So in this case, it was machine tabulation, right? Meaning that everything seemed to have been done properly and the results were clear. And so the drama was presumably...
This is awful. This is open abuse and bullying, and it's state sanctioned and sponsored and enabled by our so-called justice system. You're seeing what Germany went through prior to Hitler's re-election. You're literally seeing that. And it's just open. And the cops are on their side. The judges are on their side. That's why it's being allowed to happen. Turn on the news. You'll see cops openly threatening and harassing politicians as well.
Over. But then, in a shock to the whole county, 3 Republicans on the 5-member commission, they voted to not certify the recount. With that including Michael Clark and Gene Herman, who really, they weren't a surprise since they both voted against certifying votes in the past. But this also included Clara Andriola, the swing vote on the commission, who voted with Democrats to certify the initial count. And her decision was especially unexpected because the votes for the commission seat being recounted was her seat. Right, so she actually chose to not certify her own victory. And so as far as why she did that, she told reporters afterwards.
There's a lot of information that has been shared that, in my opinion, warrants further investigation, which is why I asked the question. It's not a reflection of anything intentional. I am not an election.
I can't understand what she's saying because of the orange dick in her mouth. It just sounds like to me because she's got this orange dick in her mouth. In the news that we're supposed to trust to bring us the truth, oh, we're not going to correct any of this. We're just going to broadcast it unchecked and uncorrected because, freedoms. They spell freedom Freedumb.
Denier.
And a fun little
Yes,
thing
you
here is like
are.
the irony is that if she gets pushed out with a far-right activist that she just threw a bone to, the person who replaces her will be an election denier. Though with that, last night, Nevada's Secretary of State and Attorney General sent a petition to the state Supreme Court asking it to require the entire county commission to meet their legal obligations and certify the results. Also, Alexis Hill, the Democratic Commission chair, made an announcement about Andriola, that one swing vote.
I am pleased to report that cooler heads have prevailed, and Commissioner Andriola has asked for reconsideration of her vote on the canvas.
Right, so it's looking like she might switch her vote
It's
back
too
in favor of
late.
certification
Throw her
next
in the
time
trash
meets,
bin
which
where she
could hopefully
belongs.
defuse the crisis. But also, while that would be a relief, I wouldn't say stop holding your breath yet. Because the thing about this little local fiasco, it is just one symptom.
They're
an
living,
example
breathing
of something
cancer.
going on in counties and states across the country. With far-right Republicans working tirelessly to purge local offices and fill them with election result denying Trump supporters. And if we go through a scenario where this happens all over the place,
And we're just
in New York,
letting it.
in a way that
And we're just letting it. Because our country is filled with pussies who choose clicks over right and wrong. Whether that be clicks on social media or belonging to the fucking high school clique you never outgrew.
that could affect the results. I mean, we could be looking at a full-blown constitutional crisis. And then, so the latest Israeli offensive underway in Gaza. We should talk about it. And also with that, everything that it means for the ceasefire talks, the situation with Hezbollah, and of course, because we can't help it, where the US fits in all of this. So to start, this latest offensive, it's happening in Gaza City. That was once home to more than a quarter of Gaza's residents before the war, and it was largely destroyed by the end of last year. But despite that, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have now returned. And also notably, so have some Hamas fighters. So again, we're seeing similar scenes play out there. You had leaflets dropped on the city earlier this week, as well as online and recorded phone messages being shared, calling on everyone in Gaza City to head south. And all of it echoing the very first evacuation
And then they'll
order from
bomb
last
south.
October, when the Israeli military told 1 million civilians
They
to leave
keep
the city and
doing
other
it.
parts of northern Gaza ahead of its initial ground invasion. But of course, that was the beginning of this war, and now we're almost 10 months into it, with the vast majority of Gaza's roughly
Anywhere they
2.3
go,
million
Israel
people
bombs that
already
too.
displaced, and many of them multiple times. Not to mention the areas Israel marked as safe zones, they're already extremely overcrowded. And then also sometimes they're not even really that safe. Right? I mean, you had one Gaza City resident telling the Washington Post that she and her family categorically refused to leave our house. And they're not because there's some sort of attachment to their home, but because they don't know where it's actually safe. And at that point, the evacuation order reportedly sparked heated discussions among Palestinians online about whether or not to follow it. With the UN Humanitarian Affairs Office also warning that Israel's instruction for people to leave Gaza City will only fuel mass suffering for Palestinian families. But in any case, we're now seeing tanks and troops moving deeper into Gaza City, and clashes are breaking out between Israeli forces and militants, with Hamas also claiming that there have been
Of course. Every Palestinian at this point would be justified in rising up against every Israeli soldier that comes into their city. Israel is not the good guys. They're the other bad guys. Israel and Hamas is just two villains. It's a heel versus heel match.
Been 45 airstrikes in the Gaza City area just today. And then, also with that, we're seeing reports of residents trapped in their houses, as well as, just bodies laying out in the streets. And notably, with all of this, the Biden administration just confirmed that the U.S. will resume shipping 500-pound bombs to Israel, because the U.S. had paused the shipment of these and even bigger 2,000-pound bombs back in May due to concerns about the scale of civilian casualties in Gaza. And specifically, at that time, concerns about a potential full-scale Israeli assault on the southern Gaza city of Rafah. You had Biden at that time saying that it was a red line for him. Also, to be specific here, the 500-pound bombs, those have resumed, but the 2,000-pound bombs are still being held back. Though, as you could probably guess, 500-pound bombs are still a fuck ton of bomb. And to that point, you had a researcher at the Center for International Policy saying, in Gaza's densely populated areas, the difference in the destructive impact between a 500-pound and 2,000-pound bomb is negligible, both causing immense
Every single person in the Biden administration approving these arms to Israel should be tried and convicted of war crimes and punished accordingly.
destruction and civilian casualties. Right, and with that, a key thing is that the Israeli strikes continue to be associated with mass casualty events. Take Tuesday, for example, when a strike near a school sheltering displaced Palestinians reportedly killed at least 25 people and wounded 50 more. The Israeli military saying that it was all to target a single Hamas member who took part in the October 7th attacks on Israel. And then to add to that, these bombs are coming in as more people are also dying from not having enough food. In fact, a group of UN experts released a statement this week accusing Israel of waging, quote, an intentional and targeted starvation campaign against the Palestinian people, and even calling it a form of genocidal violence and saying it's resulted in famine across all of Gaza. But with that, you have Israeli officials characterizing that statement as misinformation and saying instead it has continuously scaled up its coordination and assistance in the delivery of humanitarian aid. Also, another notable big development with humanitarian aid is that this week the U.S. built pier for increasing aid to Gaza. That is now being permanently dismantled after operating for just 20 days. And actually, in that time, it only delivered what would have been a single day of supplies before the war began. And then, all of this stuff is relevant today because an Israeli negotiation team is heading back to Cairo to hold further Gaza ceasefire and hostage talk. Well, yes, this is something that we've seen before, with it obviously leading nowhere. There are some important things that have changed this time. Most of all, Hamas has reportedly dropped one of its key demands for an agreement, which was that any deal include a guarantee of a permanent ceasefire. And then beyond that, both Israel and Hamas reportedly signaled their acceptance of a, quote, interim governance plan in which neither party would rule Gaza, and in which security would be provided by, quote, a force trained by the United States and backed by moderate Arab allies, drawn from a core group of about 2,500 supporters of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza who have already been vetted by Israel. And in fact, in just the past day, we've had U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby telling CNN that they're cautiously optimistic about these talks. And actually, for the first time in a while, there is a tiny little bit of a reason to believe him. But of course, also with all the stuff that we've talked about, right, this latest Israeli offensive into Gaza City, this worsening food crisis, the arrival of more U.S. weapons, we are at risk of going back to square one. Not to mention, of course, there's still real
Fucking
doubts about
horrible.
whether leaders on all sides have any real interest in a ceasefire at all. Though also notably, they're the head of Israel's biggest opposition party has offered Netanyahu something of a political lifeline, or saying he will help keep Netanyahu in power if he signs a ceasefire deal. Plus, another big thing is that a ceasefire deal could help Israel prevent further conflict with Hamas ally Hezbollah in Lebanon, because Israeli forces and Hezbollah fighters, they've been trading fire since the war began. And that, it's just been escalating more and more in the past few weeks. But now we've had Hezbollah's leader coming out and saying, hey, the only way to stop the fighting was to end the fighting in Gaza. And adding there, Hamas is negotiating on its own behalf and on behalf of the entire resistance axis, and what Hamas accepts, we accept. And so ultimately, there have been real significant developments in terms of pushing both sides closer to a deal. But I wouldn't bet the house on it, right? Take everything with a grain of salt. Words are words, hopes are hopes, and actions are actions. And then, now, how much do you think that you're paying for subscriptions every month? Whatever you think, it's probably more. Right? Over 74% of people have subscriptions that they've just forgotten about. Like for me, for example, I had 2 subscriptions to the same service. I don't know, maybe it's just getting older. I feel like the longer I live, the more I forget about, especially the mundane stuff like subscriptions. But thanks to the sponsor of today's show, Rocket Money, I'm no longer wasting money on the ones I forgot about. Right? Because Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels unwanted subscriptions. .com/PDS. That's rocketmoney.com/PDS. rocketmoney.com/PDS. Is it in your head yet? good. And then, so I don't need to convince any of you that the US healthcare system, it just sucks ass. I mean, it's one of the few things everyone left, right, and center can pretty much agree on. But however much you think you know, I promise you that by the end of this story, you're never gonna see a simple doctor's visit the same again. Right, and so to kick this dive off, we're gonna start with one of the most controversial drugs in recent American history, Bidil. And it's nothing more than two generic drugs combined into a single pill to treat congestive heart failure. It was invented back in the 80s by cardiologist Jay Cohn, who ran trials, got a patent, and then took it to the pharmaceutical company Medco, which then sent it to the FDA for approval in 1997, but the agency rejected it. And that's even though most of the review panel said they thought that it was effective, but they said that the trials weren't designed to meet the agency's particular standards, meaning that if Medco just ran another trial, it could probably get Bidil approved. But the thing with clinical trials is that they're very expensive, and by then, half the drug's patent life had already run out, so the company just handed the rights back to Cohn. Now the thing with that is, if he could market the drug to a specific subgroup instead of just the general population, then he could obtain a new patent. So Cohn, he starts sifting through the old data, and he notices that Bidil, hey, it actually seems to work better for African Americans. But notably, there were only 49 black participants in the trial, so the sample size was just too small. So Cohn, he patents Bidil again, he takes it to a different company, Nitromed, and conducts a new trial, this time with only black patients. And the drug seemed to work, but there was one big problem. They didn't gather any data to see if it also worked on white patients. So the core selling point of the drug that he was going for, right, that it's specifically for black people, it was never actually proven. But Nitromed, they only needed to prove that the drug was at least good enough to treat whatever population it marketed for. So that's how in 2005, Bidil actually became the first drug ever approved by the FDA exclusively for a single racial group, which was one small step forward for Nitromed, but one giant leap backward for American medicine. Right? Because immediately the news got picked up by major newspapers across the country who ran headlines touting Bidil as a drug for black people, effectively lending government and media credibility to the idea that race is a biologically meaningful category. But as geneticists have known for decades, it's just simply not.
I think
I would automatically distrust that.
It's grounded in bad science.
So that is Harvard resident Dr. Rohan Kazanchi.
So there's actually more genetic variation within racial groups than there is between racial groups.
And he says that race, it's an imprecise category, not only because it's an extremely poor predictor of genetics, but also because it's so fluid. Right? Many people identify as mixed race, others change their racial identification over time, and the racial categories themselves, they change from census to census, which is why Dr. Neil Schluger, a professor at the New York Medical College, says that race is entirely a social construct.
The differences that we assign to racial characteristics, skin color, hair texture, shape of someone's eyes, or something like that, are really not much.
Literally skin deep.
More meaningful than differences in hair color.
Yet, as the case of Bidil shows, the myth of biological race continued to plague parts of the medical field well into the 21st century. But what I want to show you here is that this ugly idea, what Kazanchi calls
racial essentialism,
it goes so much deeper and further than Bidil in ways that not even all doctors are aware of. I mean, let's take, for example, your lungs. If you go to the doctor to get those things tested, they'll often have you blow into a device called a spirometer. They'll then plug the data into an equation along with a bunch of other information about age, weight, and sex to see if you have healthy lungs. But what you might not realize is that one of the inputs for that equation is your race. And to understand why, we have to go back to the 1970s.
It was noticed that for any given age, height, and sex, that black individuals had lower levels of lung function than whites. And that was just assumed to be normal biology.
Though, of course, differences in lung health could probably be explained by a host of other factors tied not
environmental. No joke. Environmental. I already know what they're going to say because luckily I had a teacher in anatomy and physiology who brought this up and went across this. And I'm going to run through it and then I'm going to let Phil talk, see if he confirms. But people were thinking that there was all these like, oh, well, black people are more prone to this medical issue, that medical issue. They're more prone to this and that. This happens. And they thought that there was what it was like, well, you know, black people, blah, 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 because they're black, and white people, blah, 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 because they're white. Turns out they were working off of racist data. Like data that was, they were ignoring the environmental factors they were ignoring, like, watch an episode of House. He'll go through it. And I think they put it in the show intentionally. He always sent his crew to break into the people's apartments when he was diagnosing, because he frequently said people always overlook the environmental factors. Where they live, what they eat, where they work out, what bar they drink at, what clothing they wear, people where they shop. People overlook this. What's in their cabinet? What's in their medicine cabinet? What's in their food cabinet? What's in their fridge? These all play a role. So if the people you're studying grew up in a more segregated society, then uh, they more than likely grew up in worse conditions, which means because you would also get the same thing like if you gave the same physicals to rural Appalachian people, but you didn't let the doctor looking through the results know, well, he would assume they were black too. But no, they grew up in those same, well, some of the stuff would be different because, growing up rural Appalachia, at least you're still out there, you're not around the so much pollution like smog and whatnot. And so that's the thing, like, especially like, so you're in an area like an area where most of the white people live rurally or suburban areas, and the bulk of your black people live in, like projects and whatnot, or like in my town, you literally have the sanitation yard where they park all the garbage trucks is like right in your fucking neighborhood, like, and put there intentionally because nobody else wanted it in their neighborhood. So you put it in the predominantly black neighborhood that literally exist because of historic redlining. So you test their lungs, and yeah, an idiot might think, well, white people have healthier lungs than black people. Well, no, it's the conditions. One's living surrounded by smog, the other isn't. One's living next to a bunch of nasty ass sanitation trucks, breathing in all those fumes in the summer. The other isn't. Simple as that.
To race, but racism.
Economic status, educational status, environmental exposures, access to good nutrition.
But the people designing the equations, they didn't think about any of that. So they just figured it made sense to adjust the score up or down depending on the patient's race. Meaning you could take two patients, one black, one white, who are completely identical except for their skin color. And when you test them, the equation says that the white patient has lung disease while the black one doesn't. Basically telling the black patient, your lungs are pretty weak, but they're not bad for a black person. And while the medical community really only moved away to de-racialize lung function testing a few years ago, I mean, race is still used for it in many, many hospitals to this day. And so as you might expect, it leads to a lot of black people getting fewer diagnoses.
Anytime you go to fill out the form in the emergency room, or I go to see my heart doctor, one of the boxes is race, but here recently they've put a prefer not to answer box. And, I might start checking that.
Sees lower doses for prescription drugs and fewer referrals to a specialist. And so to actually try to quantify the effects of all this, a team of researchers, including Kazanshi, they conducted a study. With them taking a sample of nearly 400,000 people and extrapolating the data out to represent 250 million Americans. And they asked a simple question. If we test these people with a race-neutral equation instead of the traditional one, how different will the results be? What they found was absolutely shocking.
Many people would be reclassified. So ventilatory impairment for 12.5 million people, medical impairment ratings may be reclassified for 8.16 million, occupational eligibility for over 2 million, breeding of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or COPD for over 2 million, and military disability compensation for 413,000.
I mean, we're talking about disability payments that are increasing on the order of thousands of dollars annually and redistributing over $1 billion in disability payments to eligible veterans. With the study's lead author, James Diao, adding there,
almost 90% of the lung transplant waiting list in 2020 would have been rearranged or given some other priority if we had not used race back then.
And while black patients are definitely impacted the most by race-adjusted equations, all racial groups, even including white people, they feel the effects.
The use of race in these equations made Black patients look less sick and made white patients look sicker.
So some white people, they experience the opposite problem of getting overdiagnosed. And sometimes, because nowadays the equations are done automatically through an algorithm in the machine, even doctors themselves don't know race is influencing the numbers. But, and this is
Wow.
where things get really scary, all of this goes far beyond just lung function tests. Right, going back to congestive heart failure, an equation that predicts your risk of death from that is also race adjusted. And then, I mean, you've also got race being factored into equations for the risk of death from complications during cardiac surgery, the risk that an organ transplant's gonna fail, the risk of complications during vaginal birth for someone who's had a prior C-section. And I mean, the list of things, it just goes on and on. Kidney disease, kidney stones, UTIs, osteoporosis, cancer, diabetes, on and on. Hell, even the tests that modeled cognitive functioning for NFL players who sued the league for concussive injuries, they used race as a crude proxy for social factors and life experience.
I think the unfortunate reality is that there are
Wow.
examples of race-based medicine that impact nearly every organ system in the body.
But interestingly enough, the murder of George Floyd prompted a sudden reckoning in just about every corner of American life, and that includes medicine, with the American Medical Association passing a resolution
Even Candace Owens. After the George Floyd, see, this is what black people do. And everybody looking at her like, yeah, but what about you? And then she does the whole, yeah, but I'm the exception. I'm the snowflake.
resolution that fall condemning racial essentialism, as well as calling for a stop to using race as a proxy for biology or genetics in medical education, research, and clinical practice. Then in 2021, we saw the American Thoracic Society and European Respiratory Society renounce race-adjusted lung function testing. And in 2022, the Global Lung Function Initiative created a race-neutral equation for testing. So at this point, you're thinking, okay, well, that's it, right? We did it. We fixed the problem. There's no reason Phil should be talking about this. Well, as it turns out, correcting the historical legacy of racism, not the easiest thing, because just changing the guidelines, it doesn't automatically change what's happening on the ground.
Sometimes we talk about this like 30-year delay from when something becomes standard of care to when it becomes, widespread clinical practice.
Right, and we can see this delay in one of the other big examples of race-adjusted testing, kidney function.
There was a study that found that when there's a new equation that was recommended for kidney function, after like 10 years, only a quarter of testing laboratories has switched to the new equation.
Right now, he says that we don't have any concrete data on how many hospitals have and haven't made the switch to race-neutral equations. And so if your doctor asks for your race while filling out paperwork or punching numbers into a calculator, that might be a good time to ask some probing questions. Which, to be clear, it doesn't mean get ridiculous and start yelling about how you're gonna call your lawyer. Though, if you think that you may have received substandard care because of race-based medicine, lawsuits are an effective way to apply pressure on institutions to change their practices. But rather, just ask how race might affect your care, and depending on their answer, it either clears up your concerns or it starts a useful conversation. Ideally, that's how it plays out. But then finally, today, let's talk about yesterday. Because when I went into those comments, I saw a lot of people frustrated with YouTube, commenting on that story yesterday, saying things like YouTube is ruthless when a content creator uses a no-no word like suicide or rape, but can't stop bots promoting illegal stuff like CP or animal abuse.
Oh,
And others
that's
replying,
true.
YouTubers have to change the way they talk about serious topics, self-censoring in the most ridiculous way, even if they're talking about it respectfully. Though I will say there, I've just reverted to using the regular words. The one time I said unalive in a video, I felt so stupid. Though I will say the really interesting
Yeah.
thing about creators self-censoring is that it has actually changed language, especially of young people. Like I have young kids and I've heard groups of kids talk about, like, usually in reference to a video game, saying unalive or they oof. So the latter there is more connected to the sound in Roblox. But that is more of just an interesting thing to me, how, the entertainment that we consume, it affects language. Also,
Yeah.
funny enough, a bot that took a real person's comment said, the internet has been worse for a while. Moderation is trash across so many platforms except for when it comes to banning creators. It's just something so perfect, the fact that a bot picked that comment. There was also some interesting
That's
input from
funny.
people like Moonwielder, who claimed, to anyone who wants an explanation, the bots exploit a Unicode where it uses right to left characters to flip text that makes their comment look backwards to the system. To us, the comments look normal because the characters are displayed correctly. Which I will say, very interesting if true. I also want to mention this. If there is one section of this show where you should definitely do way more of your own research and take everything with a grain of salt, it is the commentary section. Like when people start a comment and they're like, hey, as
Yeah.
a civil engineer, I don't know who that
No.
person is. For all I
Exactly.
know, it could be some fucking idiot that looks like me that's like, hey, as an 18-year-old black girl, here's what I think. Also, I will say there's a lot of conversation
Exactly.
regarding phones in classrooms. Are you even seeing more and more news about school?
Exactly.
Good day to you, one and all. It is I, Justin Hawkins, and this is Justin Hawkins Rides Again. I'm here in bed, analysing music for your delectation. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm talking about Boogie again, the internet's favorite clown.
What about him?
Everyone is
What'd he
lining
do?
up to throw the baseball at the target to dunk this goober into the water tank, and I can't resist. It's actually unbelievable how he continues to find new deplorable ways to sink deeper into degeneracy and
What
dig
do you do
himself
now?
even deeper holes. I am blown away by his ability to constantly embarrass himself. I don't know what kind of kink this is, but it goes beyond humiliation at this point. So buckle your seatbelt. I'm going to deliver a high-speed Boogie breakdown here for what happened last night. So, Boogie has maintained for a while that he has cancer, and a lot of his reasoning behind his most recent cryptocurrency scam was that he needed the money for his medical treatments with his cancer. And last night, that diagnosis was challenged with people directly confronting about the authenticity of his claims because there were some inconsistencies and some shady things with what Boogie was saying about it. I believe the catalyst behind this whole conversation was Destiny, who spearheaded the questions that he had about Boogie's diagnosis, and it led to like directly talking with him about it, which then led to more and more people coming in to talk to Boogie about it. And for those that don't know, Boogie2988 is a pathological liar. He cannot help himself. Just like a pile of dog shit can't help but smell like poop, Boogie can't help but lie. Even about the most trivial things ever. He used to tell fibs about games and like what games he was playing and finishing and why he needed to buy games to review them only to never review the games. Like, I'm surprised he didn't start weighing it.
I started noticing, a friend of mine was like, hey, check out this channel. And like, I watched a few videos, and then like, there were things where he said, hey, I'm going to do, because I was watching old videos, and he would be like, hey, check it out. I'm going to do such and such. And then I would like go look for, and it was like games, because like I like watching game reviews. And so it'd be like, you know, whatever, he'd be like talking about how he was going to do a gameplay or a review or a stream or what, I forget, it was so long ago. And I would go look for that relevant video he referenced, and I wouldn't be able to find it because it just ended up never happening. It's fucking wild. Oh, but I gotta go cook something to eat. I will be back playing a game. I will come back.